Good morning, everybody. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. I'm joined by a number of folks here to witness an executive order that I intend to sign that is going to deal with the issue of exotic and wild animals and their performance here at the Westchester County Center. I'm joined by fellow elected officials, Frida Williams, who is the Vice Chair of the Westchester County Board of Legislators, Mary Jane Shimsky, who is the Majority Leader of the Board of Legislators, and Margaret Kunzio, who is the Minority Leader of the Board of Legislators. Chairman Ben Boykin is at another meeting that I just left, so he would want to be here as well. I'm going to allude to legislation as part of our discussion today that Margaret and Legislative Damon Marr have put before the board for their discussion and review. Damon is out of town today on business, but we'll ask Margaret to say a few words about her legislation, and we'll invite the other leaders of the board as well to share a few thoughts. We also have with us Ernest Lingaro, who's director of the SPCA of Westchester's Humane Law Enforcement Unit, and we're going to invite him to share a few thoughts too on this. We have made an assessment over the last couple of weeks in the period of time after the most recent presence of the Hannaford Circus here at the Westchester County Center to determine if we want to continue a practice that has been enforced for a number of years. The Hannaford Circus has been here for 50 years. We have great respect for their organization. They provided entertainment over an extended period of time. However, the issue of exotic and wild animals and their presence in a performance role here in Westchester County is very much a matter of discussion for public policy. The reality is that we have seen a greater sensitivity to how animals are being treated in performance roles over the years. New York State voted to eliminate elephants from this type of activity, and now we're talking about a series of other animals that fit within a somewhat similar category. Animals that are not domesticated, that are wild animals by nature, that need to be controlled if they're going to be in an environment with other humans, and in the act of controlling them so they can perform, whether or not we're treating those animals in the most humane way possible. We have, as a society, evolved in our thinking on the issue, and as an individual, what I wanted to do was make sure that we had some discussion and that we had this circus, which we had contracted for to perform again this year, before taking any action. To have taken this action earlier would have been to breach a contract and would have entangled legal realities. But now that the most recent performance of the circus is over, we make a decision now and we go forward. I think we all understand what a circus can mean as an entertainment function. I don't need to tell you what you already know about history. Many times circuses came to small towns that didn't have alternatives for entertainment in an era before television, before internet, before a host of different things that now entertain us as individuals. And, you know, we can sit and look at our telephone or iPad and be entertained by things that are happening all across the world in a way that was not possible when I was a child. But for those of us who live in the more urbanized or suburbanized areas now, we have at our fingertips lots of different entertainment options, and this building houses a lot of those entertainment options. And we've had the good fortune to have the Westchester Knicks here, so we can see developmental league professional basketball. We have had previously women's basketball here played. We just are very happy to have back in this building Section 1, high school girls and boys semifinals and finals, which will be a source of some pride next week when the semifinals kick off. We'll probably ask you, or at least the sports equivalents of your various publications, to come back and join us for that reestablishment of a tradition. But our administration has made the determination that it is appropriate for us now to ban having exotic and wild animals in this building for any performance purposes. Now, I have to be specific and sort of read from a document that was taken from language that was developed at the state level, because the definition of what an exotic or wild animal does have a technical element to it. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Latin genus names, which I'm fairly unfamiliar with. Members of the media will have copies of the executive order, and if you're going to do a little extra research, Catherine Chaffee, our Director of Communications, will be happy to help evidence some of those things. But in essence, what does this order cover? This order covers the following types of animals: chimpanzees, baboons, and monkeys; lions, tigers, cougars, leopards, ocelots, wolves and coyotes, bears, kangaroos, elephants, which are already eliminated by state law, giraffes, zebras. Those are animals that we commonly associate as animals that function in the wild. When you see them in a captivity situation, they're in a zoo, And we hope that those zoos are conducted in a humane fashion and they're able to function in a quasi-normal habitat setting. But when we bring them into this building, the people who run the circuses have to treat those animals in a different way in order for them to be in captivity and yet be proximate to humans. And we just don't believe that that's where we want to go in the future. We think that is not the humane way to treat animals of that nature. This order does not deal with domesticated dogs, cats, horses, and certain farm animals like sheep, goats, and so forth. There is a discussion to be had, and I'm going to allude to it in a second, about the role of that. But this executive order places a ban on these activities effective today, and it will stay in effect during the duration of my administration. It is not law. The Board of Legislators has now had legislation submitted by legislators Kunzio and Marr, which very specific language in it for their discussion, and they'll discuss it in committee, and then they'll discuss it as a body as a whole. If they choose to pass it, a law will supersede my executive order and become a permanent action and a permanent ban. In their discussions, they may determine that they want to lengthen or shorten whatever this executive order does, and that is the appropriate balance of power between the authority of an executive, who can act immediately, and a legislature, which acts with deliberation and dialogue. And I'm sure they'll explain it in a second, but they will have a public hearing. They'll have public discussions about it. People who feel either way about this issue will be able to come in and dialogue. And then, of course, if they do make a decision to submit a law, it will come to my desk for signing, and depending on circumstances, that law will be in effect longer than my tenure as a county executive. However, this is an example of looking at something and saying, I think we need to move in a certain direction. I'm using the executive authority that's been granted to me by this county over the course of my 4-year term, more than 2 years of which have expired. We have given direction to our officials, our professionals, Commissioner Kathy O'Connor, who does a terrific job, she and her department, in managing this and all of our parks facilities, that we've made a policy decision here. And we've done it with the input of lots of different people, but we believe we're doing the right thing. Some people will disagree with this decision, and I accept that there's disagreement. I think you know, those of you who cover me in the press, I'm not angry when somebody disagrees with me. I obviously want them to be factually correct, and then I'm perfectly happy to argue back my point of view when somebody argues a counterpoint of view, and that's what small d democracy is. However, I think we've reached a point which was reached previously in the state of New Jersey, in the state of California, in the state of Mississippi, in the state of Hawaii, in the county of Suffolk, where other jurisdictions have made the decision that to have these types of performances and to subject those animals to whatever efforts are needed to control them in this kind of an environment for them to perform is not worth the entertainment value that people get from it. We believe that not merely the one circus that we have, Hannaford, but that there are other circuses out there. They may or may not want to come to this facility. That's part of the selling job of filling the building. But we believe there are similar entertainment entities that can be solicited to come in this building. And if we book them into this building, they will be equally entertaining to the young kids and to the adults that come in here without having lions and tigers and some of the other animals I've mentioned. I also think that this is a discussion that people will have over a cup of coffee. Some of the things we do, we talked about an airport master plan yesterday. We talk about coronavirus. They represent things where people who are expert in the area of managing an airport or managing the public health system come in with greater experience and knowledge. This is more a matter of how we as Americans feel individually, what we think, what our values are. And do we think that it is valuable for us to deal with certain animals in a certain way, to bring them in to perform for our entertainment? Is that the right thing to do? And our administration believes no, it's time to change direction. And then, of course, we'll look to the Board of Legislators for their direction as well. I'm going to first ask Margaret Kunzio, who is the co-author of the piece of legislation that is separate from the executive order and could supersede the executive order if it passes, to comment. And then I'm going to ask Alfreda Williams and Mary Jane Shimsky to comment. And then I'm going to turn to some of our other friends here for their commentary as well. So, Legislator Kunzio.
Thank you very much. I want to take the opportunity to first say thank you, County Executive Latimer. This executive order is Executive Order number 1 of 2020, and I think that's very appropriate. For all of you that know me, my constituents, my colleagues, you'll know that this is a passion for me. Animal advocacy is something that I've worked very hard on during my tenure. I've worked with Ernie Lungaro in the past, with the dog tethering law, the animal abuse registry update. These are things that mean a lot to me. The legislation that we are hoping to move forward with at the Board of Legislators also means a lot to me. As County Executive Latimer said, we're evolving. And I think empathy is a very big part of who we are as a society. And to see these animals that are in captivity, that are in these cages, that are performing for our entertainment is not something that I think really signifies the values of who we are in the society. I will continue to fight for those that don't have a voice. My actions with animal advocacy are always ongoing, including the 2 pot cake puppies from the Bahamas that I'll be taking in this afternoon to foster. So it's something that means a lot to me. As the county executive said, this legislation will go through the proper channels. It'll be in the legislation committee and other committees. We will take feedback from the public to listen and to hone in on the wording. And the legislation, if it does pass with the support of my colleagues, will be county-wide, not just for this building. So I want to take the opportunity again to say thank you. I appreciate it, and I will continue to fight for those that don't have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Next, Vice Chair Alfreda Williams of the Board of Legislators.
Thank you. Excuse me. I just wanted to say that I will certainly support Legislator Kunzio and Legislator Ma in this effort because I feel that wild and exotic animals have been taken advantage of by the so-called civilized public, and that we owe them a debt in terms of their being able to continue and grow and prosper in this life. And today, this morning, we have some young people here from Greenberg's Central 7 who are dedicated to protecting the life of animals, and I'd just like to point them out. Come on. Do you want to tell them your name?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sebastian Din, and I am a part of the Animal Care Club. I am also the president, and we have some lovely animals. We have some turtles, a rabbit, and these animals are very lovely, and I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
It's so small.
You have to speak into the mic.
Okay. So my name is Gisela Pollitt, and this Monday, a very tragic incident happened where there were mice in my school, and then people were throwing rocks at them, and I decided to step up and help. And I brought it to the adults in the building because of the tragic incident, and it wasn't good at all, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Trinity Sylvester. I'm a senior at Woodlands High School, and I've been passionate about animals for pretty much the entirety of my life. So seeing everyone take action towards this cause is really inspiring to me, and I'm thankful to be here and experience this.
Thank you very much. Now, if we have the guidance of these young people, certainly we can do the right thing for the animals of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfreda. Next, our Majority Leader, Legislator Mary Jane Shimsky.
Thank you, George. This is the beginning of another productive collaborative effort between the executive and the legislative branches of county government. This is somewhat similar in process to the gun show ban, which was the first executive order that George signed when he became county executive. The county executive is looking to make sure that the right policy happens as soon as possible. But of course, executive orders can change with the county executive. So it will be the job of the legislature to vet this legislation and hopefully make something more permanent, which will do a more long-term job of protecting the animals who need protection. I think this is the kind of issue that in many respects is generational. I think the young people get it for many of the reasons that the county executive already discussed. And I thank them for their advocacy, and I thank them for their understanding that this is not, that a circus really is not the best way for humans and animals to interact. I also thank Legislator Damon Marr for his persistence on this issue. I thank Legislator Margaret Kunzio for her concern and her experience on all things related to animals. And I want to thank our animal activist community for persistently reminding us that biped hominids are not the only creatures on this planet with rights who deserve protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Next, I'd like to invite to speak Ernest Langaro, who's director of the SPCA Westchester's Humane Law Enforcement Unit. I'm sure Ernie and his colleagues have seen many things out there, and their experience in this area is as close to expert testimony as we have. Ernie?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank Westchester County Executive Latimer for taking action today with the executive order banning wild and exotic animals from traveling shows. There's been a lot of reports on the training, and that's what the public really doesn't see, is the harsh treatment sometimes of these animals that are performing. And that's why we're so grateful at the SPCA for his action today. I think if more people were aware of the actual training that these animals have to go through since they're small, we'd probably all have a different view on it. So with that said, thank you, and we appreciate your executive order.
Thank you, Ernie. I just want to highlight that the decision to sign this executive order today was deliberative. I have been lobbied about this issue for quite a while in the 2+ years that I've been county executive. And I did not want to do something just sort of knee-jerk on the basis of how many people contacted me. There are a lot of people out there who feel very passionately about this, and I respect that passion. There are some people who don't agree with what we're doing today, and they also express their opinions. But I wanted to make sure that we were deliberative about it. Members of my team took time and energy and effort to look into what other counties and other places have done on the topic, to analyze what options there were. We talked with Kathy about if we were to change this in direction, how would we resell the space, and what would the dollar and cents impact be? How much do we lose, and how much could we gain by alternate activities? Are there alternate circuses or alternate performances that could then come into here that would still provide an entertainment value without having this? So I don't want people to think that this was just, an emotional off-the-top thing. We thought about it. I delayed action because we had a contract in place, and it would have been wrong to have just broken it arbitrarily in the middle. But we had that satisfied, and now we're ready to move forward. I would also say one other thing. The process of self-governing is never clean. There's always a process of dialogue and debate and discussion. Many times you expect to see those of us in public office definitive on something, and this is our position. But there are some issues that require you to consider both sides, to think it through carefully, to listen to people who are strong advocates, and to listen to people who are opponents of it. And so for those who might say, how come this didn't happen sooner? The answer is we took our time because we wanted to get it right. And I think by signing this executive order today, we are getting it right. And so with the authority that the voters of Westchester County have given me, I sign this executive order number 1 of the year 2020. It highlights that we direct effective immediately that the use of exotic or wild animals in any traveling performances shall be prohibited at the Westchester County Center and at all other county properties. For the purposes of this executive order, we define what the exotic or wild animal shall mean. Certainly members of the press are happy to get copies of this, and then you can interpret that from there, and that we define what traveling performance means under this. This does not affect our dog adoption show that is here. It does not affect our reptile exposition. I may not come to it, but people who like reptiles will, but there are no performance of the reptiles. They're there to be seen and appreciated by those who like reptiles. But with that, I will sign this into law on this, the 28th day of the month of February. It's now in effect. Thank you. So we'll open it up to questions from the press. You can direct questions to me or any of our other guests who are up here. And then when we're finished with the press conference, if you'd like to interview any of our guests here, including Sebastian and these young ladies as well, they'll be happy to get their first show on television. They'll look back years from now and remember where they first got on television. So, any questions?
George,
Peter?
How many days was this circus here, and how much money did it bring?
It's a 3-day program, I believe, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 3 or 4 days.
It's 3 days. There were 8 shows this year.
Okay. And that's down a little bit, Peter, from what we had in the past. I don't have an exact number for you. I believe it was about $185,000 was the revenue stream this year. That number it was down somewhat this year from last year, which was also down from the prior year. There may be any number of reasons for it, although we did have very good weather. The period of time of promotion may be a factor. You can argue that the performance which lacks certain other animals in it might be a determining factor. But whatever it is, that was the impact of it. 8 performances over 3 days, in round numbers, $185,000 of revenue.
How easy or difficult will it be to make that money up with another country?
Well, I would say, the team that operates here has done a very good job of being very creative in bringing business into this building. Last year we had a very good year, and I suspect that, it's going to be a struggle, but there are certain organizations that meet over that period of time. And if in the first year we don't recapture all of that revenue, I suspect over a fairly short period of time we'll pick it up. And when you judge the county center like any other facility, you have to take a look at the sweep of the whole year. We've had conversations about Playland, which is seasonal because it's an outdoor facility. This is a year-round facility. We lost the New York Liberty after having them for 2 years, but we've rebooked those dates with other types of activities. When we eliminated the gun show, we rebooked that weekend with other activities. So I'm reasonably confident that the shift in usage of the building won't cause us to miss the targets we've set this year for total revenue and total profit.
So just to be clear, the reptile show and the pet adoption show, those are still going forward?
They are. And that's because, Michelle, there's no performance element in either of those 2 shows. Certainly, the dog adoption program couldn't be more, empathetic to the dogs that are here. And, there may be other types of programs that would come in here, and we'll have to look at each of them in light of the executive order. We can't anticipate, who might come knocking on our door, but we will be looking to make sure that they don't include exotic or wild animals in a performance setting along the lines that we've identified.
What has been the reaction from Hannaford? I mean, we're going to reach out to them ourselves, but
Right. I haven't spoken to any representatives from Hannaford. I think probably the first and most important thing is they knew that we were considering making a decision. They wanted to know where we were coming down on it, yay or nay. It's been about 10 days since the performance is over. Normally, entities like that like to rebook immediately for the following year. Now, my understanding is Hannaford has the ability to adjust their performances to include or exclude different types of things. I expect, and Kathy may know this more specifically than I do, that there's some dialogue to determine if they want to come back. We would welcome them back just without these, because much of else what they have, the acrobats, the clowns, and so forth, are very entertaining and do not run afoul of this. Whether they choose to do that or not, I think, is probably the discussion in the next few weeks. And I suspect if they haven't made a decision yet, that decision will happen fairly quickly because they want to put their bookings together for 2021. Kathy may be able to give you some specifics, Michelle,
We were
on that.
waiting for this opportunity this morning, and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah. Kathy O'Connor, Commissioner of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation. Sorry.
Thank you, Kenny, Executive Latimer. We were waiting for today's executive order to be signed, and then I will have a conversation with the Hannafords along with the management staff here. They are looking to come back, but they just really want to know, yay or nay, what was happening with the animals. They will now know, and then we'll have a conversation with them as to whether or not it's appropriate for them to come back or we fill it with something else in that same time frame. Yes, definitely.
without the animals?
Yes, and they said they could, so that's what we'll be talking to them about.
Can you talk a little bit about your legislation, a bit more long-term, what it means for the county, what it would mean for the county?
Well, at this point, since it's in its infancy, it will obviously depend on going through committee and going through the proper channels and getting completely vetted to find out the specific language. But basically, the legislation would encompass the entire county, not just the building of the county center. And we would be looking at the definitions and what exactly will be wild exotic animals. Are we going to add, take away? Are there going to be other parameters that my colleagues would want to add to this? Maybe it's not just limited to performances, maybe it's expanded. That's going to be all in the discussion phase. So it will take probably a couple of months to really hone in on the language. Like any good piece of legislation takes time, not just a knee-jerk reaction, as the county executive said. So we will be working on that, and we'll be getting started on that within the next couple of weeks.
Help me out if you could. What animals were in the show here? What did they do, and what concerns did you have about them?
Yep, Kathy or
It's probably
George?
Kathy
Yes.
more for the specifics. We had in this show, lions and tigers at the most recent show.
Yes, we did. Yes, we had 3 tigers, 3 white tigers, and 3 lions. And basically, if you've ever been to a circus, it was a female performer who just basically had them come into a cage, and they all go up on pedestals, and they one by one come down, and they do rollovers, they do, jumping up, standing on back legs,